Right, so my clock's turned to 12:31, so I think we will get going. I can see there are still a few people arriving, but we are recording, so this will be obviously shared afterwards. And yeah, beautiful sunny day here in Oxfordshire, so hopefully it is with you wherever you are in the country. So firstly, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar today, where I'm going to be providing an introduction to Agricultural Industries Confederation, AIC Sustainability Action Plan. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Vicky Robinson, and I'm Head of Sustainability at AIC, and I had the pleasure of launching our action plan at our conference last November. And through this webinar, we wanted to provide the opportunity to share it more widely with our members and obviously other interested parties as well. Before I move on to housekeeping, I just want to acknowledge the teamwork that went into producing this report. My colleagues at AIC, in particular Andrew Pearson, who is helping me today with this webinar and who co-authored this, and those members who kindly gave their time and knowledge, providing me with a much appreciated critical view. I had a small group of members working as a Sustainability Action Plan working group, and they were absolutely brilliant in providing steerage and asking me lots of questions and keeping me on the straight and narrow as we develop this report. So thank you very much to all of you. A couple of housekeeping points. As mentioned, this is being recorded and it will be circulated to enable people to catch up in their own time. And if you have any questions, you should be able to see the Q&A chat, or the Q&A, sorry, rather than the chat. The Q&A, do pop the questions in that Q&A box, and then they will be picked up at the end. So what I'm wanting to do is to go through a few slides. I'll probably be speaking for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then move on to those questions. But do, as I'm speaking, pop them in the Q&A and we can pick them up. So without further ado, welcome to AIC Sustainability Action Plan, entitled Agri-Supply, an Action Plan for Sustainable Efficiency. And I thought to begin with, it might help to define what we mean by sustainable efficiency. And it's basically maximising productivity and resource use while minimising environmental impact and waste, ensuring that we meet our current needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet theirs. I'm sure that's something that we could all get behind. And this plan builds on our 2020 report, a roadmap for a sustainable food chain, but it recognises the pace, scale, and focus on sustainability, which has seen exponential growth over the last few years. And this has been driven from multiple angles, from government, consumers, retailers, processors, the finance sector, investors, shareholders. All are now asking more questions and wanting evidence on what businesses are doing, reflected in the array of voluntary and increasingly mandatory reporting requirements, coupled with the focus on green claims. Since November, when I launched this, we've seen an increasing focus on economic growth from the current administration, a change in leadership in the US, and more extreme weather events such as the recent dreadful fires in California. The current government focusing on net zero technologies, renewable energy, and the infrastructure needed to support it. And they recently submitted UK's nationally determined contribution, its NDC, to the United Nations Framework and Convention of Climate Change at the end of January, with the aim of reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the UK by at least 60% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels, and 81% by 2035. So this report seems very timely at a time when we need to consider environmental sustainability in the context of economic sustainability. The audience for the action plan is both members, and for those of you who aren't familiar with our work, we represent 5 sectors: seed, animal feed, fertiliser, crop protection and agronomy, and combinable crops. But the audience is also for stakeholders and government as well. In terms of where you can access the report, it can be downloaded from our website, and we've produced a full report, but also an abridged version, which contains key chapters together with a QR code to the full report. The report is structured on AIC's sustainability framework, a framework which we created themed on the 3 pillars of sustainability: economic, environmental, and social, all of equal importance to a thriving business. But within these are topics of relevance to our sectors and our member businesses, and these are emphasised in the business drivers that you can see at the top of the framework. And this is the only place you will find the information, insights, and facts from across the agri-supply sector. With chapters based on the business drivers, the content of the action plan covers the impact of these areas for members, the current situation, what actions member businesses can undertake, and the role that AIC can provide as your trade association, which we've called the AIC enablers. The external drivers are also featured, and the role that not only policy, but the value chain and finance sector play in this area. And this was picked up in a sustainability survey we did with our members last summer, which included a question on why they are gathering data. And you can see the results on this question and a variety of other questions on pages 66 and 67 of the full report. Each of the chapters answers these questions that you can see on the screen now. And what we wanted to do was to create a common approach and rhythm throughout the report. But at the same time, we've created different layouts for each chapter. The idea is to keep it engaging, and also with the chapter structure, what we wanted to enable readers to do is to dip in and out of the report without having to start from the beginning and read it all the way through. So we thought very carefully when we were creating the report actually how someone might engage and use it. So that was why we went with this approach. As mentioned, a key element we wanted to include was the action member businesses could undertake, but also recognising where there are challenges and how AIC can help. What I want to do now is to dive into the report and highlight some of the pages to provide an insight for you into the content, look, and feel of the action plan. Starting with the economic resilience chapter, in which there is a focus on the role of data, reporting, and standards, and the need to consider how to adopt these. This slide, which is a screenshot from the report, shows some of the voluntary standards, a non-exhaustive list, that exist, and we've pulled out a few key facts about them and any interrelationships between them. And as well as this page, there is a couple of pages that focus on some of the EU mandatory standards that are coming in, and the UK as well. And in our executive summary, we highlighted 2 key themes in this area. Firstly, adopting sustainability metrics within operational activities, and the need for businesses to embed sustainability metrics and reporting as a business as usual activity. The metrics will be informed by any regulatory reporting and voluntary commitments by the businesses themselves or with those within the value chain that they are in scope of. And obviously, what a business prioritises would depend on their operations and values. And secondly, in the executive summary, we talk about how sustainability data is shared with our value chain actors. And something that I feel around data is that data evidences actions on the ground, whether it is making changes to decarbonise premises, production processes or transport, or supporting farmers with practices that deliver environmental outcomes for water, air, soil, biodiversity, etc., etc. And data needs to flow with products so that each actor in the value chain can build on it as they process and move products through their own business. There are increasing asks for data within a business and from others up and downstream to evidence voluntary commitments such as the Science-Based Target Initiative, which requires Scope 3 emissions to be reduced, and consideration is currently being given by the government on adopting the International Sustainability Standards Board standards, and that's a mouthful, which encompasses Scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions as well, businesses of certain sizes. So this is very sort of current and very topical at the moment. And highlighting some of the net zero commitments in the plan being made both within the value chain and obviously through government. And that helped focus the mind on the importance of another theme in our executive summary, which was assessing the environmental impact for all products. And understanding this enables a business to consider what actions could be taken to reduce these, often starting with the product carbon footprint, but ideally broadening out to consider other impacts such as soil, air, water, biodiversity. And although we've pulled out net zero, as you can see here, we do emphasise the importance of these other environmental outcomes in the biodiversity and ecosystems, natural resources, and sustainable raw materials chapters. The important role of joined up advice and its associated continuing professional development features heavily in all three of the themes, both in economic, environmental, and social. Recognising the importance of professional qualified advisors working collaboratively with farmers to enhance the environment and producing valuable products whilst minimising their environmental impact. And as you can see here, we've got some facts around the different advisory schemes that exist. And within each chapter of the action plan, we've included some facts that are relevant to that chapter. We've also dedicated 2 pages of the report to integrated pest management, why it matters, and the central part it plays in effective management of pests and pesticide resistance. And AIC has produced 3 IPM guides that you can see on this slide for grassland, arable, and horticulture. And we included a QR code in the report so that people reading it could easily access these important and useful documents. We continued a theme from our 2020 roadmap in the natural resources and sustainable raw materials chapters, where we were looking at circularity and farm nutrient balance. Again, this is something that we pulled out as important for the executive summary, talking about applying circularity within production to maximise resource recovery. And this particularly relates to the feed and fertiliser sectors and encompasses another number of areas, including farm nutrient balance, as mentioned, and this is shown, the diagram on this slide comes from a booklet on enabling and achieving farm nutrient balance that we produced after the 2020 roadmap. And obviously this is looking at crop need, availability of nutrients from previous crop and from soil, and therefore what is the nutritional gap and how it can be provided for. We also talk about the food and drink material hierarchy, including use of co-products for feed and anaerobic digestion, and ensuring the most appropriate destination. And recovery of recycled nutrients, for example, from sewage treatment works or animal manures and slurries, and then forming them into products. And we have got a chapter on the role of packaging and how we can look at increasing the recycled content of packaging, particularly in relation to the food and feed safety regs relating to the packaging that encompasses animal feed, but also looking at how packaging can be recycled after use as well. And that leads into another point that we made that we pull out, which is the importance of supporting the development and implementation of innovations into sustainable technologies. So as well as that packaging and nutrient recovery from wastewater, we include areas on precision breeding and novel proteins. And just to highlight the point from the previous slide about the food and drink material hierarchy, which we include, this diagram is taken from the report, and looking at the use of co-products and former food products in animal feed. And we've actually got some facts on the important role that former food products take and undertake and are included within the animal feed sector as well. So we thought it would be really useful to highlight some of those. The members' actions form a key focus point at the end of each chapter, and I've included some examples here. I won't go through them all, but they aim to cover a breadth of activities for members to consider, some of which they may already be undertaking, others which may give them ideas of what they could be considering. And we also pulled these together into a summary table because we recognise that for some people, they might not want to read every single chapter and look to get to the members' actions. They just wanted to know, just tell me what to do. So we pulled these into a collated summary. And as you can see here from this slide, we then structured them into 3 different sort of levels: where to start, next step, and further step. And the idea being that there should be something for everyone in here. And not forgetting the role of AIC as your trade association, a role that encompasses leadership, collaboration, and advocacy. And I'd like to focus in on the collaboration piece for a second. This action plan is part of the food system picture, and it represents the vital role our members provide to a resilient food system, both pre and post-farm gate. But we can't do this alone, and we need to work with all the different elements of the food system in a collaborative manner. And I always like the well-known quote that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we also pulled all the AIC enablers together into this collated table as well, again, at the end of the report and in the abridged version. And the leadership, collaboration and advocacy themes came when I sort of put all the AIC enablers together into a table to try and look at how we could present these and structure these. And these are sort of the three areas that really stood out as themes that we could talk to them about. And then we're in the process now of looking at all these different enablers, looking at actually how we can move forward with them, what's the time scale, and how we provide the leadership in that space. But what's required to facilitate these? And we thought it would be really helpful to include three areas of support of what we wanted to, what we felt was needed to help us deliver and move ahead with this. So first of all, a cross-government strategy on land use, food and energy security. We need an integrated approach to recognise the many areas of government the food system touches. An investment in innovative solutions and infrastructure, picking up on the second one on here. And our members are operating in rural communities, and we need to ensure that whether it is connectivity, alternative fuel sources, transport links for people to get to work, we don't want our rural communities and their businesses to be forgotten. And the last point on here relates to one of our election priorities, which is talking about a standardised approach to sustainability data, combined with simplifying and streamlining reporting. We need to ensure businesses are able to analyse and act on what the report is telling them and what the data is telling them, rather than spending so much time gathering and reporting the same data in slightly different formats multiple times. And something we're hearing more and more about that from our members, and the amount of time that it is taking up. And I see this launch as the end of the beginning. But I was quite rightly challenged by one of our members who asked me, Vicky, once I've read this, what do you actually want me to do? But don't worry, I feel there is a role for everyone in this. For members, I want it to be used by you all to celebrate the work the agricultural supply sector is already doing on sustainability, as we've already covered, integrated pest management, farm nutrient balance, the circular economy, to name a few. But there's always more to be done, as outlined in the members' actions, and we can be central to orchestrating change to the work we are and will continue doing. Sense check your businesses against the member actions using the other products AIC have developed, their sustainability training and sustainability self-assessment tool to support you. Look ahead at what your priorities are. Every member business will have a different sustainability strategy and plan, but it must be considered as operational business as usual. And talk to us about what you need and how we, as your trade association, can work with you. And for stakeholders, recognise the breadth of work our members are doing, but also where we have aligned messages. We may not totally agree on everything, but there will always be areas of common ground, the starting point for a conversation. Sustainability is, and I was going to use the cliched journey word, but I was listening to Miranda Hart being interviewed a couple of weeks before the conference, and she was like, I'm absolutely not using that word. I want to replace it with adventure in relation to what she was talking about. So I would like to consider this an adventure, on which I very much look forward to going on together. We very much look forward to collaborating with you. But this plan is not for sitting on the shelf. We've already had really positive feedback to date from members and stakeholders alike, and it marks the beginning of the next phase for AIC as we work on supporting our members in this crucial area. And I want to finish on a quote from Tim Benton, who very kindly wrote the foreword for the plan, having looked at it and read it through. And he's a distinguished fellow at Chatham House and a food systems expert. So he said, sustainability and resilience are no longer buzzwords, but are increasingly measures of businesses' ability to thrive in the decades ahead. This action plan is therefore an important guide to address the existential challenge ahead. So I very much look forward to working with you as we deliver a resilient UK agriculture and food system. Thank you very much. So I'm going to stop sharing now and see if there are any questions that have come in. And I'm going to ask Andrew to see if there's anything that's come in, and we can go from there.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that have come in, and a couple of comments as well. We'll do the questions first, and then move on to the comments. So the first question, if I want to discuss how the action plan is likely to impact on my business, is it possible to arrange to have a one-to-one or something similar to discuss that with AIC?
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I'm looking for any opportunity, obviously, to discuss this. What Andrew and I have been discussing is actually looking at how we can ensure we talk to every member business over the next year, so that they're aware of the action plan. And obviously, if they would like to discuss it in further depth, we can provide that. And also, if there's opportunities, if people want me to come and speak to member businesses, or equally, if you're a stakeholder and you want me to come and talk to it within your organization, then very happy to do so. As someone said to me fairly recently, now you've written the report, you've now got the fun bit of communicating and socializing it. So I'm very happy to do that.
Good stuff. Okay. Next one that's come in is about collaboration. I think that appears in one of the slides earlier on. The action plan talks a lot about collaboration. What collaborative work is AIC currently undertaking in the area in relation to the action plan?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. So we mapped actually the trade associations that we work with. So I have sent this action plan out to all of them. And so if you are a trade association and you haven't received it, let me know, because I will happily send it again, or send it to an alternative contact. And then there's some work going on. So for example, the Food and Drink Federation launched their Ambition 2030 at the end of October last year, so just before we launched our action plan. And so we've done I'm talking to them and looking at where we've got areas of common messaging that we can back up each other's messaging as well. And there's some collaborative working going on with the NFU, UK Hospitality and British Retail Consortium as well. And I've got, again, setting up meetings to talk with various trade associations about the action plan, and to look for, again, those areas of common messaging, because obviously if we can articulate collectively what our members across the food system are doing, it's obviously adds weight and power to what we're saying. And it was interesting with the Food and Drink Federation, there were a lot of areas of commonality between what they said in their Ambition 2030. And if you haven't seen that, do have a look at it, and what we're saying in our action plan.
Okay, a couple more questions coming in now. Is there an intention to create a standard requirement once some areas of reporting, etc., have been agreed/created? If so, what is the desired timescale for that?
Yeah, it's interesting around that idea of a standard. At the moment, it's not on my immediate to-do list. I'll never say never. I think the challenge is, as I showed in that early slide, there's a huge number of voluntary standards, and as I say, some of them are becoming mandatory, and it's whether or not we can add value through having our own standard, or whether or not those voluntary standards are sufficient. And I think that's something that I would take as steer from our members, whether they felt the appetite. And obviously it's recognising that we represent 5 different sectors. So if we were producing a standard, it would need to cut across all 5 of them and be relevant to all 5. So I would never say never with anything, but equally it's not an immediate priority off the back of the action plan.
Okay, and the next one is the AIC Sustainability Self-Assessment Framework still aligned following the action plan report?
Yeah, I mean, it's still a really, really valuable starting point. There are areas of alignment. Obviously, it is structured around the 2020 action plan, so it's got a slightly different structure to the sustainability action plan, but you've got the same themes. You've got, it does talk about economic, environmental, and social indicators within it as well. And I think, as I said in my presentation, it's a really useful starting point for member businesses who are wanting to sort of think, okay, where do I start? What do I do? Because as well as obviously the indicators in it, it's got the guidance as well. But also for those businesses who are already have started on that sustainability venture, it is still a valuable resource in just doing that sense check in terms of how I'm doing, and are there areas based around the indicators where I could be doing something differently, or something that actually hadn't thought of that I might want to pick up and do, as they backed up by the guidance that sits within each indicator. So yeah, please do don't forget that exists as a really valuable resource for our members. And again, we've had, for those who have undertaken it, that it has been really helpful to their businesses. We have had feedback from members on that.
I just want to acknowledge, oh, hold on a second, there's another question coming in. Has the AIC self-assessment framework created a benchmark that you can share with members?
We haven't got we haven't got the benchmarking yet. What you get at the end of completing the self-assessment framework is a report back on how you have scored. We haven't instigated the benchmarking functionality yet, but that's something that we would very much like to do.
I think that's as many questions as we've got at the moment. I just want to acknowledge the comment that was made. Obviously, the slide around the material hierarchy triggered some interest, and obviously the elements around non-human edible feeds being in animal feed diets is of great importance in this area, and also the efficiency with which cows can process these materials is obviously much greater than the AD plants that are out there, and that's something that I think that we pretty much endorse, I suppose, in terms of making sure that there are adequate feed supply materials to create the diets required.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the reasons that for putting in that food and drink material hierarchy in the report was to highlight that its existence and how it could be, how it should be being considered as well.
Absolutely. I think we're done for questions that are in at the moment. If anyone's super fast at typing, if there's any more that wants to come in.
No.
No, we'll leave it there.
Okay, well, yeah, we weren't quite sure how long this would take. We allow plenty of time for questions, but if there are any others, my email address is on the report, so you can feel free to reach out to me. And as I said earlier, very happy to talk to you on a one-to-one basis or a one-to-many basis. If you would like further information or you want to discuss any aspects of it that are relevant to your business or to your organization. But can I thank you all very much for attending today, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, and hopefully the sun will stay with us for a little bit longer. So thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.